Hello. This video is about how to work with dashboards in Google Analytics. Dashboards are a top-level view of what's going on your site, and they allow you to quickly check the status of ongoing activities and look over a broad range of key numbers at the same time. What I love about dashboards is that you can use them as a kind of a high-level radar and then drill down into any one of them to get more details. You can also change what you see, both in terms of the length of time, the comparison time, or even the visualization for any given dashboard. So this video tutorial is going to talk about three things. It's going to show you how to read a dashboard report, change the visualization of the report, both by comparing different time periods and by changing the way the visualization looks, change from a chart to a graph, for example, and introduce a really important concept that you'll use the whole time you use Google Analytics, which is dimensions and metrics. So let's get started. What you see here is the home page that you get when you log into Google Analytics, and I'm going to just click into the LSA All Website Data. You'll have a section of your own to go to for your own department. Once I get to the dashboard, this is the default dashboard view, and I'm just going to go, once I get to the report view, this is the default report view, but we're not going to look at any of the default reports today. We're going to dive right into dashboards. So I can open up, go to the shared dashboards called AAM Site Widgets, which will have been shared with you and customized for your particular needs. So when we look at this, we see that the dashboard basically gives us a view of, these are customized reports about different pieces of information on the site. So on the upper left-hand side, you see all incoming traffic, and it's organized by the particular channel they came in on. Organic search is a search engine. Direct traffic is people clicking on a bookmark or typing the address directly into their browser. Referral traffic is traffic from another website, like maybe a news site. Social media are Facebook, Twitter, things like that, and email are people coming in from an email system. And then you can see a pie chart in the middle, which is the faculty section traffic, which shows the distribution of new versus returning visitors for the faculty section. So the way that we would use these is you can look at this across the time range. And so charts basically either aggregate data into categories, or they show you data across time. So the incoming traffic, which is a chart, aggregates all the data together into big chunks and then puts them into these categories. Whereas the research section traffic shows trends over time. So you can see if there's a big jump over a longer time period. For example, if you look at the line chart. The key thing about this that I wanted to explain today is the concept of dimensions and metrics. On the left-hand side here under default channel grouping, this set of information is called a dimension. A dimension is a list of things. It's not a list of numbers, it's a list of concepts or ideas. So in this particular case, it's a list of all the ways people can get to the website. Another example of a dimension would be the cities in the United States. Another example of a dimension would be the pages on the site. And then metrics are numbers that reflect behavior that are associated with that list of things. So in this particular case, sessions is a number that represents the number of times a person actually accessed the website. Percent of new sessions shows how many of those were people who had never been to the website before. So you can always think about any of these numbers. If it's a list of things and you can name them, it's a dimension. If it's the same number on every row that tells you something about that thing, it's a metric. So here's an example of default channel groupings as a dimension. Here's an example of landing pages as a dimension. And here the metrics are the number of sessions, and then the number of times a page was viewed during, the total times a page was viewed in those sessions. All right, so how would we use this? Well, the first thing we can do is, let's just say one of the things we heard a lot about was that event tracking and event management was a big priority. So in the events section traffic, what we did is we built a dashboard that only looks at traffic coming to, in this case, Earth Sciences events section. And right now we're looking at March 1st and March 28th. Well, that's a pretty short time period, but let's just say we knew that there was a really big event that happened in the first 4 weeks of February and wanted to compare it to March. We would go to March 1st to the 28th. We would compare it to the previous period. And it's something we talked about in our last report that talked about time management through calendars. Click on Apply. And now you see that event section traffic is organized by date. So you see this, and you can notice a big change. So 46% drop in traffic between February and March. Which means in March, if you were planning to do events in March and you had tried, you're probably not doing as good a job of getting the message out digitally as you'd like. The other thing we can do is we can look at any one of these time periods and we can change the visualization of the underlying dashboard. Now, normally you want to choose a visualization that best represents things, but sometimes you don't always know. So in that particular case, let's go back to the simpler time range comparison. And let's say that we wanted to look at something that gave us more of trend data about event section. You click on the edit key right here. And then, because maybe you're messing around and you've never done this before, you can make a copy of this widget. So click on Clone Widget, and it'll build you a new one up here. And click on Edit. And let's just call this by time. And let's look at the options we have. We can collapse it into a single metric. In other words, take the dimension and just look at the single metric. So if we click on that, it'll basically force us to look at sessions that are filtered out by the page dimension. We can look at the timeline. And in this particular case, you can look at a timeline, you can compare it to another metric like sessions. Geomap we don't use very much. Basically that shows geographic location. It can be really interesting, but probably less so for what you need to do. Table is what we see here as it currently exists, which is a tabular format. Pie chart allows you to look at distributions, and bar chart gives you a chance to look at complicated information across multiple dimensions. So in this particular case, let's say sessions grouped by channel, default channel grouping. And we only want to look at pages containing Earth and events. So this filter basically says if I look at all the information, I'm going to get all the information, but if I just want to look at the information under a particular subcategory, I would select a page containing Earth events. Now, if you're curious about any of these dimensions or metrics, there's an explanation when you scroll over the question mark. And there are a lot of these. So, I mean, for now, I would recommend that you basically stick with the ones you know about, which are already preset in the dashboards. And if you have any other questions, go to one of the scheduled lab meetings that Web Services has. All right, so let's look at the bar chart. So now this is kind of fun. Let me show you one thing you can do here is say, okay, well, let's compare the time period. I can see the jumps, relatively speaking, over time. So March versus February for organic traffic versus direct traffic. So there was a big jump in February in organic traffic. I mean, somebody was searching for something. It might be kind of fun to look and see what kind of search terms were showing up. But it's definitely something you can use initially just to say, hey, how did we do in our event management for that month? The other thing you can do is you can compare it over timeline and see if there were any particular days that really jumped out. So it looks like the big time was Friday, February 6th. So I wonder what was happening during that time. So these are the kinds of things you can do with the dashboards. You can basically identify this. And if you get into the habit of looking at them on a regular basis, you can determine how many visitors came to a given section, whether or not your email campaign is working well, how many people are looking at the course guide during critical parts of the semester. And then as you have deeper questions, you can click through any one of these and go to the underlying default report that supports it and do deeper analysis. Now, the activity of these default reports is actually the subject of a different training, and you can, as always, you can go to the on-demand labs if you have any other questions. So I hope you enjoyed this. Again, what we did is we went ahead and looked at the dashboard. We talked about the concept of dimensions and metrics, and we described how you can take dimensions and metrics and visualize them both across different time periods and by using different visualizations in the widgets themselves. Thanks a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to give Web Services a call. Their training team would be happy to help.